Welcome, folks, as you're joining us. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give it just another minute or two to let folks join us, and we'll get started shortly. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start us off here. Welcome. As I said, my name is Isabel Crome. I am a business consultant here at the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start and grow. We provide free one-on-one counseling and a variety of low to no cost webinars like this one. We're very proud to be part of a nationally accredited network of SBDCs with over 1,000 centers across the United States. Today, you have joined us for the final session in our Pivoting to Procurement series. This one is on capability statements. And as in the past, you've been joined in listen-only mode. This is a webinar, so you are not able to ask questions out loud, but we do encourage you to ask questions as we go through the presentation. You can do so using the Q&A or the chat. I'll be monitoring those while Maureen is presenting. And please do chime in if you have questions. You never know who else you're helping when you ask those. So please, we definitely encourage participation here. A copy of today's slide deck and a link to the recording will be sent to attendees. And as I said, you've been muted, so please post any questions that you have. Our speaker for today is Maureen Herzig, who's another of our business consultants here at the Temple SBDC, and she will be leading our presentation on capability statements. I'll turn the floor over to Maureen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And just to reiterate Isabel's invitation for questions, I'm looking at the attendees. It's a somewhat intimate group today, and I don't expect to need a full hour to get through all of the materials. So please, any questions you have, please don't hesitate. Like Isabel said, my name is Maureen Herzig, and I'm the procurement specialist on staff at the SBDC. So I wanted to first thank everyone for joining us for the last session of this series. At the end of the series, at the end of the session today, Isabel will be dropping a survey into the chat. If there are any topics in which you're really interested in us covering in the future, please don't hesitate to include that. So on to capability statements. So this is, in my consulting, this is actually one of the topics that comes up over and over and over again, both on the client side, you know, people coming to me looking for assistance with their capability statement, but there's also a lot of discussion on the agency side as well. So when I'm talking to people like our friends from SBA that were here last week, for example, you know, I vividly remember a conversation with some of my contacts with the school district of Philadelphia, and time again, what almost always comes up is their identified need for people to receive assistance with their capability statements. So hopefully we're able to clear some things up. So today, and answer any of your questions. So this is just a little bit about the center. Isabel already covered who we are and what we're all about. So we're just going to go right into the session. So first thing we're going to talk about is what is a capability statement, right? There are, when you talk about marketing materials that you can pull together for your business, it really runs the gamut. You know, there's brochures, there's flyers, there are white papers, you know, all kinds of things. So what we want to talk about is what exactly the capability statement is. The best way that I have found to describe the capability statement is that it is a resume for your business. So it is clear, it is concise, it gets all of the pertinent information about your business and your capabilities in a very small amount of space. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 pages max. And what can it do? So the capability statement typically will be used as part of what you are providing to a potential client to introduce yourself. It is basically your on-paper elevator pitch. Time and time again, I'm saying in the federal government in particular, that when small businesses apply or register their businesses rather in the small business portals for that agency, one of the things that they are looking for is the capability statement. And what on the receiving end, what the capability statement can do is allow the person accepting it, the small business officer can accept the capability statement and almost immediately identify where in the organization it should be sent. And then another thing is to not only use the capability statement to tell the potential client exactly who you are and what you're capable of, but also to differentiate yourself from your competition. So this is a long list for PowerPoint, but I thought it would be very, as we send the slides out, it would be very easy for you to have everything you need on one slide. So just like a resume, your company name, obviously on a resume, it would be your personal information, but as far as the capability statement goes, it's going to be the company name, address, email, website, maybe LinkedIn, NAICS codes. So what this will do, especially with government, is help them identify what it is you do. And we'll get into each one of these bullet points with a little bit more detail. Company summary, a very high level, 2-3 sentences. This is who we are. This is what we do. So you could include there, how long you've been in business. We a marketing company in business since 1983 is a good way to start. But again, very, very concise. Your core competencies, these are going to be just a quick list. What is it that you do? Your differentiators, again, another list. How are you different than your competition? And what makes working with your company advantageous to me, the customer? References, and if there's room, selected project history as well. Depending on your industry, there may be other pieces of information that are appropriate, such as geographical coverage. So if you are in a line of business, for example, janitorial or security services, where your staff need to physically travel to the location of the job, then it would be appropriate to say, okay, we cover Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. Your company officers, if they have any key personal experience, if your officers have any very high level certifications pertinent to your industry, you'll definitely want to include that. If you're going after federal government and your line of business often will require security clearance, you can indicate the level of security clearance that you have, bonding capacity, industry specific certifications. So whether it be lead certification, if you are in engineering or something along those lines, your cage code, if you have one, that is a government issued code that is assigned when you sign or when you register rather into the systems for awards management, which is one of the things that you need to do to get started doing business with the federal government. And if you have additional questions about that, I recommend that you check out our YouTube channel, because this session is one in a series. We've covered a number of different topics. A cage code, I think, is one that we hit. And then also your DUNS number. So, information like that, and any sort of information that you would want your potential customer to have right at their fingertips. What not to include. So like I mentioned before, I have spent some time talking to people inside of the government, and these are some of the things not only that they've communicated to me that they've seen come across their desk that they would like people to resolve, but also these are things that I've seen as well, working with clients in the past. As they send their capability statement to me for review, some of these things I've seen as well. So a distracting background. I have seen different capability statements with different color themes that just are really distracting. I've seen something that was kind of getting a bumblebee vibe from a little bit. So the yellow was very, very harsh, and it was paired up with a black background. So some of the writing was black on yellow, and some was black background with white writing, and it was really very distracting to the eye. And I've seen many different color combinations like that. And as a resume, you're really going to want to be as conservative as possible. Too many words. So with the executive summary, this is actually where I see the most pain points with capability statements, is that with the capability statement, many people tend to get very carried away. We just need maybe 2-3 sentences, and we will have the opportunity during the session to kind of take a look at a few examples of what looks really nice and what I would advise not to do. Excessive images, you can certainly put your label, or I'm sorry, logo, perhaps the logo of different organizations that you've worked for or different agencies, but be very mindful that it can get very busy very fast. And so you really want to make sure that you are choosing those images very carefully. Spelling and grammatical errors. This is the #1 piece of feedback that I am getting from people inside the agencies, saying, you know what, these are the problems with the capability statements that I'm receiving. Please grammar check, or please get these businesses to find a spell check. So you want to make sure this is your first impression. You want to make sure that it's right. And so what you might want to consider is putting together the text in software such as Word or some other word processing software that has grammar and spelling check capabilities. And then from there, once you get everything settled in, then, move it to a different, like something that you can print into a PDF, or, if you want to use another software. But that's always a great place to start, is with a software that will help you identify those problems. Formatting inconsistencies is another issue that pops up in conversation a lot. The way it's been described to me is that oftentimes capability statements will look like someone took pieces of several different documents and just threw them together. It didn't format them, didn't get anything consistent. It, not only does it look unprofessional, but it ends up being very distracting when the reader is reading it. And what you want the reader to do is to be paying attention to what it is you do and who you are, not the flaws of your capability statement. So, standard formatting. And then also you want to really keep it concise, because the potential buyer, especially when you're looking to work for government agencies or large corporations, oftentimes the people that are on the receiving end of the capability statement simply don't have time to read a novel. What they want to do is glance, look at the bullet points, figure out what you're about, understand it, and move on. Decide what they should do with your capability statement, who to send it to, and then move on to the next one. And then outdated information. You want to make sure that your email is correct. You want to make sure that your website is correct. All of these things. I think the common theme here is pay attention to detail. Make sure that the capability statement looks like you actually took some time to really do a thorough job, and make sure that it is done in a way that really represents who you are and the amount of attention to detail that you provide and the professionalism that you want to put forth when marketing with your business.
Hey, Maureen, we have a couple questions here.
Oh, yes.
To you. So one is, do we need to add images to the capability statement?
No, not necessarily. If it's not anything that's going to bring any value to your statement, I don't think it is necessary at all. In fact, if it's really not providing any value, I would recommend that you don't.
Right. The page limitation is real. Second question, is it okay to have multiple capability statements?
That is a great question, and that is a point that we were going to bring up. Absolutely. Just like your resume, you know, it's highly recommended that you have your basic, you know, basic go-to copy of your capability statement that you can tweak with either, you know, your experience or putting on different projects that are most appropriate to the customer that you're sending it to. So absolutely. Anything else?
One more, and I was just about to type an answer because I know we've talked about this. What is the requested length for the capability statement?
1 to 2 pages, no more, absolutely no more than 2. And I'm going to pull up a sample of a capability statement in just a moment that I think it looks really good. And, you know, Isabel and I talk about this a lot, that there are some strong feelings about whether a capability statement should be 1 or 2 pages. And, you know, before COVID, when we were going out and marketing in person and going to conferences and things like that, it could still be 1 page, but double-sided. You know, I think in this virtual world where you're sending soft copies of everything, it's very obvious that your capability statement is more than 1 page. So, you know, it's oftentimes a judgment call, but I do think, like, my personal feeling is that if you're able to communicate your project history on that second page, and the decision is to have the project history and have 2 pages, or don't have the project history and have 1 page, I really lean towards the second page, because it really gives the potential customer a much deeper understanding of your capabilities when you give them concrete examples of jobs that you've worked on. But again, if you can fit all of that into 1 page, you know, that would probably be ideal. Okay, so I am going to pause here for just a moment. Let's see here. I'm going to stop share. So I'm working with a couple different screens here, which means I need to move things around every time I want to. Okay, Isabel, are we seeing the capability statement?
We sure are.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is an example of one of the capability statements that I have come across as a sample. I believe I found this when I was attending a session many years ago. And I think it does a great job. So we'll just go through, you know, each piece of the capability statement. What I've done is had the slide deck mirror this part of the presentation where we're just going step by step. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between the capability statement and the slide deck. But when you have everything after the session, when you are sent the slide deck and sent the sample that we're looking at right now, you'll be able to put the two together and sort of reiterate the information that we're talking about. Okay, so up here, capability statement. You definitely want to have that as your title, front and center. I've seen, just in fact today, as I was looking for some additional samples to throw up, I've seen the capability statement turned on its side down here. I really think it's best up here, front and center. It's the first thing I see. It gives me no question what it is you're handing me. So capability statement, here's the logo. And as you'll see, this is really just the only graphic that is on this capability statement. So then they have their address, phone number, email. I would also recommend putting a website. Okay, your Company summary. Again, you'll see this is only 2 sentences long. 35 years. So it's leading with the information that they have been doing this for 35 years, right? And then, full service concrete construction contractor. So they're going, they're hitting one pertinent topic after the next, right? They're just loading on the information one after another. All over Northeast Ohio. So it gives the customer or potential customer some idea of location, and okay, we deliver professional services. That's great. And then this is just their tagline. And this all looks very clean, right? The colors aren't too bright. It's a nice contrast, but it's not too loud. And then we move on to the core competencies. One recommendation I would give you is anything that can be put in a bullet point, start with putting them on the capability statement as a bullet point. If you find that you at some point need to take that information and move it into a paragraph form, with the exception of the company's summary, if you can put it in a bullet point format, do that. And the reason being is that, okay, their core competencies are right here. I don't have to look around for them. There are 5 bullet points, and within 3 seconds, I know exactly what their core competencies are. So you're doing me a favor by not making it a chore for me to find the information that you want me to find. Differentiators. So what are I'm sorry, let me back up here. And I know I'm going really fast, so please, if you have questions, let me know. Okay, so your core competencies, these are the fundamental products or services that you provide and how you are, what you're delivering at a high level and a high quality. So for this company, it's the foundation, building and repair, the drainage systems. So these are very real services that they provide. This is the core foundation of the services that they offer, and that's what's included in the core competencies. So it really shouldn't be 25 bullets long, unless you're a really, really large, diverse business with, many, many product lines. For most of our clients at the SBDC, this is going to be a relatively manageable list. Differentiators. Okay, so now that I know what you do, please tell me what makes you rise above your competitors. So in here, this could be anything from awards that you've won, any industry specific certifications that your staff has. It could be that you've been in business for 35 years. If you are a younger company, but have a team of people that, collectively you have 120 years, you could put that, anything that I, as your potential customer, are going to read and say, oh, 2018 Contractor of the Year, that's pretty impressive. Okay. Oh, good. They're OSHA certified. That's fantastic. Trilingual, that's great, because my staff, on the customer, my staff, we have a very diverse language base. So trilingual works perfectly for us. And 35 years. So in your case, it may be something very different. It could be, again, like education or different boards that you sit on. These types of things are going to differ from industry to industry and between companies. But anything that you can identify that really sets you apart from your competition, go ahead and put that there, again, in a bullet form. Okay, moving on to references. So as your potential customer, I am interested in knowing who you've done business with and how I can get in touch with them to find out more information about your products, your services, and the other customer's experience with you. So this makes it very easy. Okay, the company name is bolded. I have a specific point of contact available to me to reach out to, which is perfect. I have email, absolutely. If you are providing references, absolutely include an email. That is how people, especially now that we're not out and about at different meetings and things like that, you know, a lot of people are just so dependent on email, and that's the preferred method of communication. So if you're given the choice between a phone number and an email, absolutely use the email, but really the preferred things to include would be both of those. Make sure that the information that you are including on your capability statement is correct. So if Michael over here, if he has moved on from the company, you need your capability statement to reflect that he is no longer there. You know, you don't want your customer looking for someone at a company who simply isn't there, right? You want to make this as easy for them as possible. So you really want to make sure that you stay on top of your references, make sure that you know how to get in touch with them. And then also, it's a really, really good idea to make sure that your references know that they are your references, so that they're not getting surprise calls and a little bit caught off guard. At least if you reach out to them and say, you know, I feel like we had a great experience. Would you mind if I put you and your contact information on my capability statement as a potential reference? At least that person has the opportunity then to start thinking about what they might say, rather than completely blindsiding them and it ending up in, you know, a referral or a reference that isn't quite as good as it could have been, just because the person wasn't prepared.
Maureen, can I pause here? There was a great question from an attendee in the chat. What if you have a startup company and you don't have much in the way of references? What else could you include there, or how would you approach that that issue?
I think one thing that you can do is include references from like jobs you've done within the industry that you worked on before you started your job, before you started your business. So if you, for example, spent many years in, you know, working for Boeing and in a very small, well, Boeing's not a great example. If you were, you know, in a large engineering firm, for example, and you were a project manager working on these different jobs, you know, with a lot of connections and relationships because of those jobs, but now you've moved on to your own thing and are running your own engineering firm, you can use those references on there. And you may just want to put a little asterisk, you know, I worked with this person under a different circumstance, you know, at least it's something until your company gets to a point where you have your own company references. They can at least attest to your work ethic and your experience and what you do well. So I think that's the best you can do when you're a startup, and at least it will be something. You know, especially with very small companies, you know, there's very little differentiation between the company and the person running it in those very early stages, you know, when you might be just running your own one-person show. It may feel like there isn't a whole lot of difference between the two, depending on your industry, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay, so here on the second, this is the, you know, the debated second page, and I will tell you why I think it's really valuable. So on that second page, you can see that they repeated the header and the logo, and here's their selected project history. I think the table idea is a fantastic idea, because very quickly I can say, oh, okay, this is who they had the contract with. You know, this is maybe 20 words indicating exactly what they did, contract value. So that gives me immediate recognition and understanding of the size of that job, and then when the job was completed. One thing that you might want to consider if you are going to go this route with the table is in the table, you can put the point of contact and their contact information. And when you do that, you can get rid of this entire section here. And what that will do is save a lot of space. And you can get this down to, perhaps one page. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone with including all of that contact information with the selected projects. And here you can just see enter contract name. This is from a Word document that I'm actually gonna have dropped into the chat so that as you leave the session, you'll have a Word document that you can start with. Just start plugging your information in. Okay, so as you can see, this is a ton of information on those first 2 pages, but we still haven't addressed a number of things, right? So that's where the sidebar comes in, which I think is done really well. The DUNS number, socioeconomic certifications. I think this is a really, really good idea to have it on the side as a literal side note, rather than leading in the company summary that your company is, certified as XYZ. Because what you want to do is emphasize the quality of your work. Oh, and by the way, I am MBE, I'm veteran, I'm lead, and I am HubZone certified, right? So if you're going to push any of these certifications at the very front, maybe in the company summary, the only one I would move over there is lead, because that is an industry specific that shows, that you've got through that certification process. But even then, I would put it in the core competencies. But as far as the socioeconomic goes, government's going to be looking for companies that are really good at what they do first. And then if they can use that company and check the box off for their socioeconomic goals and small business goaling, then that's just icing on the cake. NAICS codes. So this is going to tell the person that's receiving your capability statement the industries in which your products and services fall. So, and I'm going to pull up another example that I think was done really well, where they actually not only included the NAICS codes, but included the definition of each NAICS code, which I think is a really, really good idea, because there are so many NAICS codes that chances are the people on the receiving end of these statements don't have them memorized. And if you're able to define what each NAICS code is, it just gives them that much more information to push the capability statement onto the right person. And then here again, we talked about bonding capacity. If you had a security clearance that you needed to put onto the capability statement, this would be a good place, right? The company officers, this tells me who is in charge of your business. If you are a one-person show, you can absolutely leave that off. If you want to present like your company might be a little bit larger, but you can keep it on as well. I don't really have strong feelings about that either way, other than if there is a name on the capability statement, it is much, much easier for the person to know exactly who they are calling. And I think that is beneficial information. And then the contact information. So the email, again, you're gonna make sure that it's correct. The website, and then a phone and a fax, which is probably a little bit older, but yeah, so this is the capability statement in a nutshell. this one is done really well in that it has all the information that I'm looking for as a potential customer. It's only 2 pages. And most importantly, everything that I would be looking for is really easy to find. I'm not bogged down reading paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of just words. You know, I've got a couple bulleted sections that I can pull the words from and the descriptions from really easily, and then move on to the next section. I think that is all of the comments I had about this. What I'm going to do is go through I'm just going through the slide deck real quickly just to make sure that I have hit all of my, the one thing I did want to mention is in the selected project history, if you've worked on subcontracts, government subcontracts, or subcontracts on jobs in which the prime had a contract with a large corporate customer, definitely include that, right? So in addition to the information on the contract you had with the prime, you would want to include the agency which you were serving on this subcontract. So it could be, subcontract with, XYZ contractor, agency, Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services, and then the address of where the job was. So was it Health and Services DC office? Was it one of their regional offices? Because that will give the potential customer a little bit more insight onto, who you've served in the government and in what capacity. Isabel, do I see some more questions popping up?
Yes, there was one question that just came through. Do you recommend starting out as a subcontractor if your business does not have much experience?
Absolutely. With government contracting, they have this added component of responsibility because they are spending taxpayer dollars. And so they're very, very risk averse. And what that means is that they will be a bit unwilling to do business with businesses that haven't been around for a while. So, and generating revenues during that time. So we typically recommend that businesses don't start even really considering marketing to the government until they have at least 2 solid years under their belt. Subcontracting can be a really great way to get from point A to point B in terms of, being a little bit closer to the startup side, to point B being the contractor. The only hesitation or thing that you really need to be aware of with subcontracting is that the payments may take a bit longer. What usually happens, especially on the federal side, definitely on the city side, is that in many cases, the prime contractor is not required to pay you, the subcontractor, until they have been paid themselves. So if they are invoicing the prime contract, the prime contractor is invoicing the agency at net 30, you're not going to, it's likely that you won't get paid until net 30 after their first net 30. So you're really looking at a very long time frame between the time you do the work and the time you get paid. So if you don't have that working capital to get you through that time frame so that you can still pay your employees and your bills while you're waiting for that payment to come in, what I would recommend is continuing to focus on building the commercial side of your business so that you get to a point where you have enough cash flow to float the subcontracting jobs. If you are able to do that, then subcontracting is a fantastic way to get your feet wet without as much red tape. And subcontracting entry into that market tends to be a little bit of a shorter climb that's not quite as steep. So it is definitely one of those things that can be very advantageous depending on exactly where you are in your business. For some of our clients, subcontracting really is probably the only way to go. There are some industries in which the government really primarily purchases that company's product or service as a much larger part of a much larger project. So things like construction, if they're putting up a building, they're not buying the masonry separate from the carpentry or the drywall hanging. It's all one big project. And so in instances like that, you're really best looking at subcontracting only. Okay, were there any other questions about this particular document? I was going to pull up a few more examples.
No more questions
all
about
right.
this document in the chat right now.
Okay, great. So I'm going to stop share. Oh, yeah, hang on just a moment. Okay. This is an example of what not to do. So I think visually the colors look great. It's nice and neat and it looks well organized, but there are so many words. It would take quite a while for anyone really to get through this entire document to really pinpoint what the company does, especially since it is 8 pages long. So while the text boxes look great and everything, looks from a layout standpoint, looks really nice, there's just so much information. This could be, you could use this perhaps as a your master copy, where then you start pulling the different appropriate pieces to create your agency focused copy. But this is just one example I saw that I thought was a good one, in that, yes, it's true, it has a lot of really, really good information, but it really needs to be condensed. And then there is this sample as well. This I thought was done. Did you see a switch in my screen?
We're looking at the almost there sample capability statement.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. So this I thought was done really well. And this is the example I had mentioned previously about not only listing the NAICS codes, but listing what those codes mean. Again, because oftentimes in that Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or if you're sending this to a corporate customer that has a supplier diversity program, chances are they're going to take your capability statement and send it off to someone else, like a project manager or a buyer or someone who's then going to take that information and decide whether or not they'd be interested in having you as a potential client. I can sort of see a lot of the intake then being weeded out and separated and sent on to the next phase. And so if you are able to identify your NAICS codes and define them, I think that's really helpful. And this is done in a way that it's really organized. Now, there are a lot, which can be a little bit distracting, but, the fact of the matter is some businesses really do fall within this many different NAICS codes. As you can see, the core competencies is nice and very concise. They do, however, have a little bit of formatting issues here. So that's definitely something that they would want to resolve. But then their competencies, you know, nice bulleted point. I don't have to look for anything. That's the one thing, is that the one thing that's really important is that you want to make your information as easy as possible for people to find. Advantages, this would be another way of saying differentiator. Here is a few of their previous clients. Small business, what they forgot is the administration. So you want to make sure that when you're putting clients down there, you're actually putting the right name. But this is really, really close to being done. So you see here, they do have some logos, but they're not all over the place. The graphics are nice and small, and they're all in the same place. And that the only reason, there were just a few reasons why I titled this Almost There. One is that the shading doesn't come all the way down. The federal small business, they forgot the administration. So there's just a few little odds and ends here that could be tightened up a little bit, but it's really organized. The lines are clean. It's really easy to find things. So this was a good example, I thought, of, and it all fits on one page. So what they don't have is the selected project history. But if they could condense some of these NAICS codes a little bit, they could rearrange things slightly and fit that information on there. So I'm actually going to let's see if I can do this here. I'm going to drop a Word version of the first statement that we looked at. I'm going to drop that into the chat. And then, like I said, it can give you an opportunity to go in and actually plug your information in. And then from there, if you're not in love with the color or the formatting, you know, you can, because it's in Word, it's somewhat easier to change around, and you can just make it your own from there. But at least the template will get you started in providing the right information and gathering the right information.
I wanted to just, Maureen, interrupt for one quick second, because there's a good question in the chat. Sometimes the government asks you to submit personal net worth statements when you bid on a project. Why do they want to see that? And how much money should you have in your bank account in order to get considered? And so I think that's about economically disadvantaged. Is that right? Does that sound right to you?
Yes. So personal net worth, I would expect to be more tied into the socioeconomic certifications than it would a job. If they're looking at your business in terms of a contract and are interested in finding out the financial stability of your company, unless you're a sole proprietor, I would really not expect them to be looking at your personal net worth at all. Where the personal net worth is absolutely required is for certifications such as the 8A certification at the federal level, the Pennsylvania Unified Certification at the state level, and then Isabel, do some of the commercial certifications have that requirement as well?
The WBE and MBE do not.
Okay.
I know economically disadvantaged WOSB would also it would also require personal financial disclosures, because the personal financial situation is relevant to whether the business is considered economically disadvantaged. But it's in the same vein as 8A or UCP, where it's part of the certification process as opposed to something that's being requested at the point of contracting or bidding.
Yeah, and so what the certifiers are trying to do is really determine that, yes, not only do the owners of your business fit into the socioeconomic bucket of being, socially disadvantaged, but the economic piece is going to look at your personal net worth. So if you're worth, $7 million, it's going to be a hard sell to say that you are economically disadvantaged. But their threshold is typically, I think it's about 3.25 million, excluding the value of your primary residence and any equity you have in the business. But that is the reason why they would look at your personal, unless it's a very complicated job from a contracting standpoint, and they need to know the financial stability of your company. Again, your personal really wouldn't come into play unless you're a sole proprietor. And I should probably wrap up by saying that is a general statement. I think if they are looking at personal net worth, it would definitely be on like a case-by-case basis. So if you were asked that question, I might need a little bit more information to answer the question of why. But typically that's not common practice, at least federal, state, local. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Maureen. I just added a requirement for EDW OSB, which I found online.
Okay, great. And I'm going to see if I can. I unfortunately was having some problems. For whatever reason, Zoom does not recognize any of my files in Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to take just a moment and.
So this would be a great time if anyone has any questions they want to drop in the chat. This would be a great time to address those while we're pulling up the file.
Yes, apologize for the delay here. All right. So the title of this is Sample Construction Management. You can certainly use this template for any industry. Okay, there you go. So that is available for download, like I said, in Word. Great way to just pull all of your information together. And then the slide deck, I know we didn't go through the whole slide deck. Really, it's just looking at each piece of the capability statement with some few notes that Isabel and I had discussed yesterday. So I just left up on there on the slide deck, little random notes and things like that that are worth keeping an eye on as you go through your capability statement. So we will make sure that we can get the slide deck out to you so that you'll have those notes with the template as well.
And I'm going to also go ahead and drop into the chat a survey to let us know how you enjoyed today's session. It's one of the requirements of our funders. So if you could take a second and complete that, really will help us out. That is going in the chat right now. And there were some great questions that came in as Maureen was presenting that we addressed as they came in. But if you have other questions, Maureen, I think you are ready to.
Yes, and we have some resources as well. In fact, I am going to share the end of the slide deck just to go over a few things. So what you will find at the very end of the slide deck, we were able to provide the links to a few resources that both Isabel and I found to be really, really helpful, as well as on the next page, information on upcoming training events. So PASBDC.org. If you go onto the events page, it sometimes will have a mind of its own and filter just to Temple or whatever center it seems to be set to at that point. So if you would like to see all of the upcoming webinars and educational opportunities throughout the Pennsylvania SBDC, you'll just want to make sure that you go to the filter at the top and indicate that you're looking for information on all centers, not just Temple. And then I also included some upcoming events that are being held by our friends at the SBA. So the SBA events page, there are some virtual and some in person. It is searchable by zip code. And then the More SBA events link will actually bring you to their Eventbrite page, where you are able to look through just massive amounts of upcoming webinars as well. So there is a lot going on still in the world of webinars and training and resources available. So there's a few helpful places to start as well. And then if you have any questions, I highly recommend accessing the resources about the capability statements that we provided.
One attendee has asked if we could possibly have the second capability statements in Word. I don't believe there is a Word version of that statement, right? We got it as a PDF.
We did. What we could do is mail it out. Oftentimes what I'll do is I can see if I can save it as Word. It was the second one that was almost there. Is that the right?
Yeah, can you clarify whether it was the construction, the one that we focused on as an example of doing things right, or the almost there? I'm
gonna see if I can save it as a Word file right now. Look at that.
Great question there.
Yes, that is a great question. And I was able to do it. It looks like the transition from PDF to Word was pretty smooth. So it doesn't look like you'll have too much reformatting to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get that. Let's see here.
Yeah, great question. Alice, ask and you shall receive.
I'm sure everybody else on the call is thankful that it was asked. All right, I just need to get this on my desktop. All right. I think third time will be a charm here. Let's see. Okay. You should have it.
See it in the chat.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to drop one more time as well the link to that 30-second survey. Please do fill that out. That's a requirement of our funders. It's also really great actionable feedback for us to know, if we offer this series again, what worked, what didn't work. If there are no other questions, though, I would just like to say thank you to Maureen Herzig for taking her time today to share your expertise around capability statements with us. It's really a very important document and one that is easy to get wrong in a few different directions.
Yeah. So Isabel, thank you for all your help in pulling everything together. And thank you for everyone for joining us.
Absolutely. If you are looking for individual support with this or with other aspects of your business, you can find the link to request individual consulting on the SBTC website, and you'll receive. Oh. And Alice asks if we could send over our statements and you could review. Yes, we can work with you to review your capability statements, and the first step is to submit that request for individualized consulting, and that's something that our consultants can certainly support you with. Great question, everyone. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Maureen. If there are no other questions, I'll say thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Have a great night.
Oh, someone's saying they're almost
there.
You know what? We'll work with our events team to make sure that that document goes out as part of the follow-up. If it's not showing up in the chat, it's showing up for me, but if it's not showing up for you, I'll drop my email in the chat and you can reach out to me and I'll make sure you get that file.
Did I send it to everyone?
You did.
Yeah. I did. Okay.
It's showing up as having.
I know that was problematic last time.
Definitely. It went to everybody. Okay. So just reach out if you didn't get that. And then in our follow-up email, you'll get a copy of the presentation and the recording from today. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.